This video, and indeed every video I make again on any Springbok win ever going forward, is dedicated to the memory of Gareth Mason, who was one of the loveliest and warmest people I ever had the chance to speak to. And his passion and love for South African rugby was completely unmatched in everyone I've ever met. We're all forever walking tall in your shadow. On paper, Wales and South Africa aren't nations with much in common. Histories that don't line up, cultures that seem so separate. A scorching nation with 60 million souls, powered by braai and barbecue, plays a land of 3 million where it's so damp seaweed becomes a delicious national dish. Literal lions against a 3-to-1 sheep-to-human ratio, and two peoples with such different mentalities, and yet when you boil down their very different worlds onto a rugby pitch, the showdown between the Lekker and the Leek is increasingly becoming one of the game's greatest rivalries. Where the Welsh have a history of just being chippy little bastards who inexplicably upset those who should be crushing them under their shoe, South Africa is a culture instead built on pride of who you are, where you come from, and of what you truly stand for. And this is what rugby matches between the two now give us. An eternal underdog that's used to fighting for its very right to still exist versus a proud people willing to battle to the death for who and what they represent. And so, despite the two teams' form coming into the summer, it makes it no surprise that they now head into the final weekend of this series level, one win apiece, and all to scrap for as the final test looms. Only once in the last 10 encounters has a game between Wales and South Africa been decided by more than one score, with the average winning margin being just 4 points. And things were even smaller than that in Test 1, as an overtime penalty by Damien Willemse sank the Welsh resistance, before they managed an even smaller margin the following week, as this kick by Gareth Anscombe sealed Wales' first win against the Springboks on home soil, 116 years on from the first fixture between these two unlikely enemies. So, with the third test on the horizon, it's finally time to break down the first two tests so far, starting with the first test, kind of with occasional context and kind of drop-ins from Wales' dramatic win this weekend just gone. So, how does South Africa pull ahead in the series with that dramatic late win? It's been a really interesting test series so far, because I think Wales were the better team in Test 1 and lost, and South Africa superior in Test 2 and yet also lost. And Wales got off to an absolutely flying start in that first test through this try by Lewis Rees-Zammit. Now, if we look at all the things Wales did well during the Six Nations, we can basically boil them down into two categories, right? Disrupting the opposition and getting the most out of their freak talents no matter what their specialties were. It was the kind of like attack, defence, breakdown, that kind of bullshit that doesn't really matter that got in the way for Wales. But this summer, instead, Pivac's team seemed to be leaning really hard into those two to try and make the rest click. And we see it perfectly in the lead up to this try. South Africa making it pretty clear they're jumping at the front, and Rollins doesn't look to win it at all. Instead, he just disrupts it. As De Jager looks to bring the ball down safely, Rollins just kind of slaps it, so instead it spirals out uncontrollably. It bounces off Khaleesi and straight to Thomas, who can offload to Hardy, who then draws to Clerk and finds Rollins himself. Now, if we look at the box, they've locked into the perfect position for them all. Etzebeth tying them all in. Everyone tight, wonderfully so, except they're kind of against only Adam Beard. Now, Adam Beard is pretty much the best defender of them all on the planet, but putting 8 people on even him is a compliment too far. However, Khaleesi spots the breakaway, but Beard just kind of tugs Etzebeth's jersey and pins 7 of the 8 Bok forwards in a second longer, and so by the time Colby makes a tackle on the Eiffel Tower himself, not one of the Springbok pack are on side, meaning Diolande has to fill in essentially as all 8 forwards here, and Lacaniuam as the entire back line. And frankly, he does an unbelievable job, pressuring Big without actually ever committing, and instantly able to turn and start running back towards the 22. The back three come in, but North and Williams fix them easily, and it puts Rees-Zammit away down the wing. Instead of committing and stopping them on the gain line, Am has accepted they'll lose 20 metres, but is more or less in position to catch a winger by the time they reach the 22. However, this isn't just any winger. And I reckon with 98% of back three players on the planet put in this position, Am would have outfoxed them, caught them and stopped them on the 22. But Lewis Rees-Zammit is so superhumanly fast, he can just skin Am and score in the corner. And it's a complete contrast to the Bok's own first try. Now, after an incredible job he did disrupting them all last autumn, the Springboks know if they're going to score from this 5-metre line-out, or any line-out, their main task is to get Adam Beard, the best maul disruptor in the world, out of the game. At first, they attempt to do it like this. A dummy block of forwards engage him, so the real unit can then break off and challenge down the short side, but Wales push them into touch. There's more to the counter ball than just Adam Beard. But the second time out, they go full Springboks and just dispense with the subtlety. Who needs subtlety? It's Boring. Instead of calling a huddle, Diego shouts the call once they've seen how Wales are set. He points out Beard here, then actively jumps into him as he comes to ground. Now normally, being massive in a maul comes in handy because it allows you to kind of physically shove the thing forwards. But instead of using his bulk, Diego is just making himself as big as possible, as though he's trying to like scare off a bear, because the only way Beard is disrupting this maul is to go through him, and Diego is so massive he can't. He's just kind of trapped here. And Beard is left just kind of like grappling his nipples. He eventually kind of contorts his body a bit, but Diego then just twists his entirely. He spins Beard out the way, and it opens a target for Visa, who decks him, driving him to ground. The moment Beard's out the picture, the Boks now know their pack will basically turn anyone into powder puff, and it's easy for them to just power straight through an Umbunambi to score. However, when faced with the same situation the following week, Wales adapt in subtle ways. The Springboks make the same call, they eye up where Beard is, but instead of setting to defend the maul as any other team in the world would, Wales contest. Beard doesn't nab it, but frankly he isn't bothered by this. By throwing himself up in the air, the trap will no longer work, or he is now blocking no one. He simply is South African not contributing to the shove. He's just kind of there, and it allows Beard to enter the maul on the fringe. On the other fringe, however, Dan Lydia essentially tackles Du Toit. He falls to the floor, collapsing the maul, and momentarily freezing its momentum. Beard and Lydia are able to splinter the maul a tad. Mark's no longer central, and Lydia then rolls up slowly, getting in Du Toit's way again. That splintering allows Falataf to drop a shoulder and separate the maul into two segments, which Beard can wrap around and shut down easily. Or here, as the Boks set smoothly, as far away from Beard as possible, knowing he can't get into a position to wrestle, he sets a wide base, starts low and drives upwards. He kind of locks the Welsh effort. It's close to the technique you'd see in like a strongman contest of they're pushing a car, but the moment he hears the referee's call of use it, the thing switches. Beard walks around twisting the maul. De Klerk could play it now, but he's hoping this kind of movement is South Africa regaining momentum, and so he doesn't. But, alas, Beard twists it all the way in, then flops, piling a whole bunch of beef on Pt1's back. Wales win the turnover and go into half-time somehow level. This was one of 6 attacks inside Wales' 22 for the Springboks in that first test, first half, and across those, they came away with just 3 points. They scored only once. By contrast, whilst Reece Zammit's second try was pure opportunism, it kind of sums up the biggest difference between these two teams so far. After 160 minutes of play, Wales have entered the South African 22 6 times, and in those visits, scored 4 tries and 2 penalties, converting 100% of their opportunities into points for a total of 24 points. South Africa, on the other hand, have shown a weird lack of ruthlessness so far this tour. But as much as social media has gone after Elton Yankee so aggressively, you think it was Elton Yankees threatening a poor flight attendant just doing a job, I think that, well, I mean, in that first half of the first test, he was kind of shit. Let's be honest. I'm not gonna lie to you, but errors you can forgive. What we saw in the first half wasn't just mistakes, it was a general lack of ambition. The Springbok game plan is generally a scripted first few phases where they look to get on top physically, then 2 or 3 phases where they're inventive, where they try to open the game up a bit, see if anything's on, and if it isn't, they set up and kick and just keep marching forward. There's no wasted effort the moment creativity dries up. But in that first half, the Springboks just skipped the middle section, they skipped the creativity itself. Once they got on top, they didn't seem to want to wait their 2 phases of actual attack before Fafi thumps it. Look at this, as Wales hold the maul, South Africa play 2 phases, and whilst Reffel and Beard do a great job of slowing it down, the Boks are still going forwards. It's slow ball, but they're marching onwards. But instead of trying to keep pressing, Yankees hangs a cross kick. It's too far in field, meaning Colby has to head inwards and the taller Adams risks a pack down, knowing he has 2 teammates, but the Springboks have no one else nearby. They're not expecting this. South Africa just conceding a great attacking chance, whilst 2 scores down. It was like a light had broken inside Yankees' brain. We saw occasional flashes that his skill set was still working, such as here. Wales are numbered up, but spotting how much space prop Thomas has around him, he assumes Thomas will want to jam in and fill it, so delays his run to target the space on his outside, knowing that will open up once he makes a decision. But it's too simple to just point out Yankees, right? Here South Africa in pretty good pattern, 2 good carries in a row, and then they look to get into the flashier phases. But just take a note of Willemse's positioning, right? This is nothing. This position is absolute. He's not contributing anything at all here, right? He's one of the Springboks' most dangerous attacking weapons, and he's just nowhere. They're not using him during these phases, and he clearly has no idea where to stand to get into position to attack within this system. And it means, despite Wales being numbers short outside, the Boks can't use it and end up running right into Wales and just ending up with slow ball, chance gone, and they kick it away. Or here, Yankees himself, again, no options at all. The entire Welsh team can turn in and just ball watch D'Alande because Yankees' line is so shit. If he's to receive the ball, he's running directly into Lukhanyo Am, and so to free up this space, Am himself slows down and pulls away, and it just kind of leaves D'Alande with no option but to carry it in, and Wales no decision to make in defence. There's a total lack of threat. Both Yankees and Willemse are incredibly skillful players, but they're not natural organisers of an attack, and it led to a bluntness in how the Boks move the ball. And then on comes Billy le Roux. If you asked, I reckon, the three contenders for the Springboks fullback jersey, which they preferred, scoring a try or giving an assist, I think Damien Willemse would say scoring, Warwick Hallant would say assisting, but Billy le Roux wouldn't give a shit so long as they scored. And I think that's kind of the secret to his game. So frequently, we see two other players get the headline after le Roux makes a boring pass in midfield that has to be delivered just right, and the way he pulled those strings on Saturday showed exactly what South Africa miss when he isn't there. For instance, after this heart-in-mouth moment involving Cheslin Kolbe, Dan Biggar bangs the drop out as long as he can, and Willemse considers his options, but le Roux just goes, nah, just have a crack. So he takes it in and le Roux slots into fly half. He calls it out the back and seeing Watkin begin to shoot up hits Diolande exactly the man Watkin is targeting, knowing he'll therefore be easy to draw. This allows the centre to put Smith into space and le Roux's quite happy to just watch the carry and reset on the other side. Wales slow it down quite brilliantly, but this is as gorgeous a use of slow ball as you'll ever see. His body language says it's going behind to Willemse, so Wales go, tasty, we'll smash him. But instead he drops it off to Koch, who hits a tiny hole, and as he clears out, Willemse steps in. Now, here's the thing, right? I think asking Damien Willemse to play the Billy le Roux role is a waste of his abilities. Because what he does so well is things like this. He just holds the ball up for 2 seconds until two sets of eyes are on him, and then sends Elric Lowe into another gap. The Springboks recycle, and then le Roux develops his plan. He drops the soft ball off and instantly screams this plan. Once again, he hits Diolande, because that's who Wales are targeting, and Smith's line causes enough confusion that Am can return the favour and get on the outside of Reece Samet. However, he makes a slight ankle tap, and it causes Am to stumble and means the pass goes forward, ending a move I feel absolutely confident would have otherwise resulted in le Roux just masterminding a South African try inside a couple of phases before too long. And he's just such a smart rugby player. Even tiny moments like this, just knowing Liam Williams is the main Welsh high ball threat, he sees Williams overshoot the ball and so realises he doesn't have to call a mark, it's not worth doing. Williams has missed it, so he'll be in open water once he catches it. Le Roux gets scragged, but he almost puts Diolande into the clear, and even then, still scrambles a whole extra 10 metres and allows South Africa to get a great clearance in on their own terms. And he got to give one of those aforementioned boring middle passes in the lead up to the beautiful try that put South Africa in front, finished by Cheslin Kolbe. With the Springbok maul still being such a threat, Wales lock all their resources into stopping it, meaning Smith can catch them off guard by breaking away. He rattles into Navidi, but Marks breaks off with him and can clear out, giving de Klerk incredibly quick ball. And then he spies this gap. However, as he goes for it, the referee notices it too, and he has to sprint faster to get out of the way, and ultimately kind of almost becomes like an extra defender. He's certainly a roadblock for de Klerk, who was hoping to draw Lewis and open a huge hole here that would probably send one of these three forwards over the line. However, instead they have to adjust their line and Elric Lowe can still burst through, but he's now headed straight into Wales fullback Williams. South Africa recycle, and this is the thing that de Klerk does just so well. He knows exactly when to inject cartons of adrenaline into the Springbok game, and the Welsh defence becomes frantic, and we can see le Roux make the call. One more phase, and then we go wide. So de Klerk varies it. He hits Am, who draws two Welsh tacklers, and crucially gets South Africa right to the edge. The Welsh defence is now stretched as thin as it can possibly be, right? 11 of the Welsh defenders are stood this side of le Roux, and so he knows his job is just to spread it as quickly as possible. If he stops to engage a Welsh defender, try and draw someone in, it just gives a few of the other 11 time to drift and catch up. These two simple balls by de Klerk and le Roux remove 2/3 of the Welsh 15 from the picture, and Willemse then takes his 10th example and does similar to cut out the next two. This turns it into a 3-on-1. But the unlikely source of Mapimpi spots the space behind North and tells Diolande to stab it through with no one at home for Wales. Now, South Africa spent a bizarre portion of the week talking up Williams as world class and Wales' real danger man. So, considering, if we're perfectly honest, right, Williams has been kind of off form for a season or so. This meant only one thing. The Springboks wanted to target him. And we saw that. Fights being picked with him and being pinned on the ground, knowing it's possible to get moments such as this out of him.
We'll stop being touches it.
And whilst Williams did not once bite, I think he did kind of get preoccupied by the physicality just once in the game, and boy, could you say it was costly. After making the tackle, Williams attempts to jackal. This is a perfectly solid decision. It could have been crucial and helped slow the ball down. It could have gone really, really well. It's worth doing. But then, instead of filling back into his position, Williams floats around the ruck, standing into the guard and smashing this one here just to try and disrupt it. Now, if you're a centre, if you're forward, this is a great job being done here, right? But if you're a fullback, by the time the ball goes wide, Williams would want to be about here, which would at least give him a chance of beating Kolbe to the ball. Instead, Williams was trying to smash the previous ruck for no real discernible reason, perhaps because a full game of being taunted finally got to him, just temporarily, and he wanted to let that frustration out within the laws of the game. And it leaves Wales short cover and Kolbe able to regather and dot down. It's a beautifully worked try, with de Klerk managing things until le Roux feels it's time to pull the trigger. However, Wales did get a sneaky little reply. Now, I've watched an awful lot of Wales playing rugby in my lifetime, but I honestly think this try by Dewi Lake may be amongst the most miraculous scores our tiny nation of Sultana scoffers have ever produced. And with about 4 forwards on the field, Wales set them all incredibly well, but Alan Wynne-Jones had just twisted the entire Bok pack out the way almost single-handedly, leaving the forward charges behind up against just Jasper Wiese. And as his teammates slowly come in to back Wiese up, Lake picks the perfect moment to break off, and Alan Wynne once again makes himself just a nuisance. Lake thunders over, which is a really dystopian sentence, and somehow, out of nowhere, Wales a level. But the game had one more twist in its tail. Now, Thomas Williams' decision has been widely derided here, but I think, frankly, it's quite a solid option. Wales' defence has been sound all game, and they're more likely to squeeze a turnover penalty out of South Africa attacking from their own 22 than they are to make it up 60 metres on their own and score. Leroux and Mapimpi are both stood shallow, figuring any kick Wales are going to make would be short to compete, especially with Dan Biggar filling in on the wing. Biggar's incredible in the air, but let's be honest, he's kind of not that quick. So Williams is able to exploit their position and knock it over their shoulder, almost getting the bounce that would have given Wales endless time to apply pressure. But Leroux covers it sublimely. Now, if Wales was still down to 13 men, but both players binned were forwards, this would be a really smart decision. But with Lewis Rees-Zammit in particular missing, for a look at the kind of value he can bring, just have a glance at this from Test 2. Wales are under enormous pressure after a phenomenal bomb by Pollard, but Zamo is able to thump it clear, and it's a great kick. And just like Williams, LRZ's kick forces the fullback to turn. But he's also so lightning quick. By the time Haaland has even stopped to assess his options, Zammit is just a few metres away, and instead of rushing in to try and make the tackle, he just lingers into the space between him and his only support, Pollard. If Haaland passes, it's an intercept and Zamo is onto the post again, and it's too late for him to kick. He shepherds him just into the path of the Welsh forwards, and Wales have marched the box back 30 metres from where Pollard originally kicked it, all thanks to Zamo's invaluable ability as a chaser. But kicking this without Zammit, let's just watch Willemse here, right? He throws his hand in the air, letting Leroux know what he's about to do. He gets in Tompkins' way, deliberately blocking him from making the tackle. But not so Leroux can squeeze by, but so he has all the time in the world he needs to throw a perfect pass to Cheslin Kolbe. He gets on the outside of the north and draws Williams to let Am do his just do some being world class, what the kind of Am does. It's what he's really good at, to bring South Africa up and into attacking range. They then just begin pressing, but the Welsh defence holds firm. This is who the two teams are, an unstoppable force facing an object that it can move, but it really, really, really doesn't want to. But in the end, South Africa have a wee weapon up their sleeve. Billy Leroux takes the ball, Dan Biggar opposite him. Biggar does this often, just sticking his arms out as an obstruction, and Leroux looks at him, sees his body language, and calls his bluff. Here, if we slow this down, right, if we pause, Eric Lowe has overrun his line, so this would be a forward pass. Damien Diolande is being lined up by Liam Williams. It'd be a hospital ball if he gives it, and he's not shaping up to chuck it over the top to Mapimpi. Hell, a tiny hole is even opened in front of Leroux. He could dummy and go through here. Either pass he could give here is a bad option, and not one a playmaker as smart as Billy Leroux would ever take. Yet, he gives the ball anyway. Not because of where his teammates are, but because of where his opposition's palm is. Do I think Dan Biggar is trying to deliberately knock this ball on? No, not really. But do I think this is a clear-cut penalty because he makes no attempt to catch the ball? Absolutely it is. The moment he gives the pass, before the ball even hits the floor, Leroux turns to the referee and calls for a deliberate knock-on. He doesn't kind of shout and scream and moan and complain. He doesn't throw his arms in the air. He says deliberate knock-on and does the gesture. I understand this is speculation, but I really, really think Billy Leroux knows what he's doing here. He's throwing at Biggar's hand to buy this deliberate knock-on, and it's borderline ingenious, and it gives Damien Willemse the chance to step up and take the kick to win the game. 32-29. And yet, it was just the first instalment of exceptional drama on a tour between two instant building rivals and enemies. Please join me tomorrow for a look at the second test primarily, also looking a bit more at Wales. But in the meantime, I really want to pay tribute to Gareth Mason, who I mentioned at the start, and I want to dedicate every video on a South African win I make going forward to, because that man just loved the Springboks so much. He was someone I felt really honoured to think of as a friend. I spoke to him quite a few times, both in terms of there's a couple of live streams out there that we did together. There's a podcast as well. But we also just spoke. I don't know. It's been an odd one. He passed away during the Six Nations, and it was a horrible thing, and kind of knocked me off a bit, and just cut part of why I didn't finish the final for videos during the Six Nations, because he died during the final weekend. And yeah, my sort of thoughts and feelings with his family. I spoke to them. I spoke to the Springboks, and they put up a really lovely tribute to him, which would have meant the world to Gareth as well. And yeah, I felt weird a couple of weeks later talking about him on a video in France, so I kind of held fire until now. But he was just one of the most wonderful, lovely, genuine people I ever got the chance to meet, to speak to. And I know anyone else who spoke to him, I spoke to a handful of people who also did live streams with him, also, recorded with him, also met him through various other kind of functions and online and so on and all sorts. And everyone got kind of high off beating him. He was just such a wonderful, happy, lovely person. Just someone who wasn't dealt the kindest of hands in life, yet made the most of it, and was such a just warm person to everyone he spoke to, and a genuine inspiration, not just on what he overcame, but in who he was out the other side of that, and how proud he made everyone around him. And yeah, I know he would have loved this Test series, and he would have loved everything. He loved everything Springboks, and yeah, as I said, my thoughts and feelings as ever with his family, but just a really wonderful person who is greatly missed. And I can never say it as well as the man himself, but for everyone out there, stay safe and never give up.